Greetings, this is Ty Brown with AthleticDirectorU. We are here at the 2022 NACDA Convention. Happy to be back on ground, in person, and able to have these types of interviews in person. I'm joined by Lynn Hickey. Lynn is the Director of Athletics at Eastern Washington University. Greetings, Lynn. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
I'm happy to have you because the wealth of knowledge that you have, right? Well respected in the industry, have weathered the ups and downs of what college athletics has to offer, right? The good, the bad, everything.
Yeah.
At Eastern Washington, I believe this is four or 5 years now, right? And then you were athletics director at UTSA for 18 years.
Right.
Overall, you've been in sports for 50 years, with 5 or 6 of those years as a high school basketball coach.
You're
and
making
you're also
me sound really old.
making you sound experienced and influential is what I'm doing. You also coach college basketball too.
Yes.
in that
Yeah,
stint. So
that's
being
how
a
I
coach,
started.
exactly. So I want to talk to you about a few things. But Eastern Washington is top of mind when you talk about being at a school that has weathered the ups and downs of whether or not to eliminate the athletics department. But it's not a school that hasn't been successful in college athletics, right? And so that conversation is interesting. So you come on as an interim, and then there's the struggle of the pandemic, and you got to cut positions, and then now you get somebody standing up and say, well, why don't we just get rid of athletics? So tell me about that aspect of your journey being the athletic director there at Eastern Washington.
I went in as an interim and was thinking I was going to be there 2 or 3 months. And after I was there about 2 weeks, it was like, I need to be, I was meant to be here. I all the meetings I was going to, and everybody's being very nice because kind of the new person, but I thought, I've done all this. I can help. And just a tremendous spirit there. It's just, they really believe they can win. Sometimes if you look at what we do not have facility-wise and resource-wise, but they truly, if you're an Eagle, you're an Eagle.
Yeah.
And we have this thing called EKG, an Eagle kind of guy or an Eagle kind of gal, and it's a certain level of person, and they have been very, very successful. So I went for it, got the position. Everything was going great. We went to the national championship that next year in football, and the board of trustees had given us a 5-year performer where we're going to really grow our budget and gradually, we were going to be, by this time we should have been about an $18 million budget. For our league, it would have been, we've been very competitive resource-wise. And then the pandemic hit, and it really started when we came back from the national championship. I went to present to the faculty senate, and there was something wrong in that room. That when they were asked to, I took a football player, some of the cheer that went, and when they asked to vote to give a commendation to the teams, not everybody in the room raised their hand to even move that forward.
Really?
And I went, what's wrong? And at this, they were going through a change of campus in trying to, they were going to move some of the curriculums out of campus. That we almost had too many resources were down, enrollment was down, and then the pandemic hit. And it was just like everything came together at one time. And it was a small group, but they were very vocal, and they were given a very large platform. So it was very hurtful. And at the same time, we went through a Title IX study. We had a consulting. Just everything hit at one time. I think what was amazing about the process was how resilient our staff and our kids were. They were unbelievable. While everybody else was on campus, we're on campus. We chose to go for the spring football season, so our kids did not have a break. And we don't have an indoor practice facility, so when we start in January, they're out practicing in the snow and everything, and we made it to the playoffs again that year. So there were some really great things that came out of it, because I think we really learned a lot about each other, and we knew who was really in and who really wasn't. But it was a struggle to be trying to keep everybody going through the pandemic, and at the same time, just having to handle a lot of things outside with the media and people questioning, should we be Division II? Should you be here? It was a pretty tough process to go through.
It has to be, and you never think about I'm gonna take this job, and in the next year and a half, they're gonna be questioning whether or not we need to have athletics, right? Your thought process when that news finally came to you that this is actually something that is possibly being considered, where do you go in your mind, right? Where do you revert to thinking like, okay, I'm gonna fight for this university? Tell me about that.
Number one, it wasn't anything personal for me. I was at a point, if it fell apart for me, then it fell apart. I've been doing this for a long time.
Right.
Just worried about those kids and what it meant to that university and that small community. If you take the red field out of that town, then the economic impact, the visibility that the university would have even in the state, in the region, was gone.
Right.
And trying to get people to understand that without, and at the same time we were asked not to speak out too much.
Yeah.
So we had to be quiet behind the scenes, and but it was just really hard to try to keep everybody's morale up and keep pushing forward when there were so many detriment. I mean, the kids, think about, this is when you couldn't even go in the building to work out, or you couldn't get in your dressing rooms, and you were going through all the nose swabs, and you had to travel a certain way, and all the pressures on the training room staff, the coaches, and the kids, and then to have to handle that at the same time. I think it made me more. I wanted to fight to make sure that it stayed in place.
Yeah, right. Which is excellent, right? With the right person to fight that fight, right?
Well,
in terms of
I hope that's why I was there.
The outcomes of that, right? You think about the pandemic, and everybody on campus is like, that almost sounded opportunistic, right? We got to make these cuts here, and then somebody steps up. Well, like, well, do we really need athletics then? Why we make that cut? I don't know, but it had to be somebody coming from academics, where there are not always people in academia who understand the importance of athletics to the academic mission of the university.
And it was, when you get numbers, you can manipulate numbers, and so. When you looked at, well, if this $7-8 million that the university is investing in athletics can go to academics, then our problems were solved. Yeah. No, the problems were not solved. That, right, yeah. But we were an easy scapegoat. It was we were the most visible part of that campus. And so, hey, this is going to solve our problems, and look who we are. But we were able to, we had, the Picture Group came in and did a study, and it pretty much showed that financially, that was not a smart decision. Yeah. And that there was value. And the thing that we had is, like you said previously, we win championships, probably when we shouldn't, and we win championships. And then for like 43 quarters in a row, our student athletes have had over a 3-point GPA. Right. 14 sports for 40, that's years. Yeah. Our graduation rate is higher, our retention rate is higher. There were so many things that we could put in front of everyone that it just didn't make sense. But we had to fight the fight. We had to go through all the media, and it was emotional. Yeah. And then everybody was in such a tough time because campus was basically shut down. So it was a really difficult thing to go through, but we went through it, and things are good right now. We're coming out on the other side. Yeah. We got our budget back this past week after not having it for 2 years. We have a new president that started on Friday, and it looks like we're going to be able to start adding our staff back. So very excited. That's
interesting. You talk about the pandemic and making cuts and having a budget back, and me being on the outside looking in, I don't even know what it means to not operate with a budget. Like, how do you even plan anything? But adding staff back, how many people do you need to add?
We have about a dozen that we need to add.
Really? And how many total in terms of?
Probably, when you put all the coaches, assistant coaches, and everything, probably about 75.
So about 75.
Most of we basically lost about half of our administrative staff, but we kept going on. I mean, last year we played Montana in the ESPN2 game of the year. At the first time we'd had a night game on campus, and we're doing it with this
skeleton staff,
and we did it.
So you're in the back room turning the lights on, like, make sure that.
And we won the game. So, we just, a lot of us, everybody did double, triple duty, great work ethic, and we were able to pull it together. the first year that we had the cuts, then, our seasons were really cut in half.
Yeah,
and so
right.
we were able to moderate our expenses. This last year, we had a deficit. So the university didn't just shut us down and say, well, you can't go. But then every time the budget committees got together on campus, they say, well, why are you over? Well, guys, a year ago we had half the season. This year we're back in full season, but you gave us the same budget.
Yeah, that makes
so there's
sense.
no way.
Yeah, can't do
Right.
all of the job with half of the resources.
Right.
12 people of 75 is more than 10%. It's almost 20%. That's a significant impact on culture when you talk about hiring 12 people in.
Yep.
That's a big job. Right?
Yes.
It's nothing you can't handle, but talk to me about how you will manage the pace of introducing new people into a culture that exists now, because this is what it's been for the last couple of years.
Right. The first thing you have to do is work through all the HR processes.
Right. Yeah.
It's very slow. You have to be very careful. Then I think what will be very, very important is that as we're bringing people in, that we just do a lot of onboarding, that we're doing a lot of, and I don't want this to sound, some social things where we're really sitting down and letting people meet each other and have conversations. And then, we're also going through the process of developing a new strategic plan.
Yeah.
Good or bad. We're going to have people there that have a lot of history with the program, but primarily coaches. And so on the administrative side, we're going to have a new, fresh look. We're going to have new ideas. And so I think it'll be fun to see how we can blend the Eagle traditions in with maybe, hey, it's time to make some changes.
Yeah.
And we have a new group of people to do that. Probably going to be a pretty relatively young staff, I'm guessing. But I do have 2 senior administrators that have a lot of experience. And so I think the 3 of us together with our coaching staff can pull this off.
Yeah, and bringing in young folks is fresh energy, creative energy, entrepreneurial energy. So that'd probably be a good thing, right?
Be all good.
That's a pretty big storm to weather going into there, which.
One of the things that we're fortunate is we're I don't like the quarter system, and I'm hoping we change back to semesters. I'm hoping that's something the new president can bring us. But technically, school's not going to start till the end of September. So we're going to have a little bit more time before, classes start and all that. Now, football and volleyball and soccer will have started, but we'll have some time to get everybody more acclimated before we're right in the heat of everything.
Right. Yeah, which is excellent. I have a question for you. The experience you bring to this conversation, I wanted to run something by you. You hear athletic directors talk about core values a lot, right? You establish your core values, and then you make your decision based on those values. And I rarely hear about how they establish the core values. I think Jen Cohen has done pretty good there. She's talked about how she established and working with the staff and the previous people at Washington, and what do they represent, and how do we want to represent what they represented. I have a philosophy, which I don't think it's anything new, but to me, what the saying is that experiences establish values, values inform decisions, and decisions dictate the adventure of life. And the thought behind that is, if you go back and look at significant experience or inflection points in your life, instead of making a decision based on how you felt from that experience, think about what you learned from that experience. And whatever you learn, let that be one of your values. And then when you make decisions, you make a decision based on the value from that experience rather than based on that experience. So you're kind of taking the emotion out of it. So you're making good, clean, objective decisions based on what you learned from that experience. So I wonder if that makes sense to you in terms of establishing values, or are there methods that you've used in the past to establish core values, especially now you're talking about coming into a new strategic plan, and of course values don't change often, but every once in a while you might change 1 or 2 of them. So just some insight on.
I think what's been real important, and I think it gives me license to keep working, is that I continue to learn.
Okay.
So I've learned so much in the last 2 or 3 years. I wish if I'd had that experience early on, I would have been a lot better than I had been. And I think when I look back at when I first came to Eastern, because I came from the FBS school, I built the football program, and I'd coached at A&M and all that, and I looked at things, and I didn't spend enough time listening to understand what their core values were to blend with mine. So I think what's important when you're leading a program is that, first of all, to know who you are and what you stand for. I think there's 3 words that really are important to me, and that's grit, grace, and gratitude in how you lead a group. I probably for too long survived just on having this, I'm going to outwork everybody.
Yeah.
But part of that was I was often the only woman in the room for probably 25 years.
Yeah, it's significant.
And so it was real, and I was not, I got to be with some great leaders. The first conference meeting I ever was at a Southwest Conference as an administrator, I'd never been an administrator, was a luncheon with Donna Lopiano and the other SWAs. And I mean, she's still a leader for us.
Yeah.
I remember that day that she decided we needed to protest, and because when the SWAs met at the Southwest Conference office, they never got a warm lunch. They just got sandwiches. Wow. She said, we're going across the street and eat at a restaurant like the guys do. And I was 32 years old. I thought, what did I get into? But I always wanted to outwork people. But I think what's real important is that you're very transparent, and that you're very vulnerable, that you're a good listener, that you're able to make decisions. And I think anytime you make a decision, you're always going to pull from your past and who you are. But as a good leader, if you're listening to the resources in front of you, they can at times change. They can give you new information, and you've got to be a strong enough person to say, that's a better way to go.
That's a better way to go, yep.
But then once we make the decision and we're leaving the room, we're all together.
Yeah.
And we're going to go forward.
Which is excellent.
So I don't know, I probably never take all the emotion out of my decisions because of the passion I have and the amount of hard work I put into something. That probably sometimes makes me a little bit more emotional in the decisions. But no, I think your synopsis of it is very correct, that in order to continue to go and to work with a group, you've got to keep a core base and you learn things and you keep those values in place. But then you can't always let sometimes maybe something emotional to you and those values override a good decision.
Right, exactly. Yeah, excellent. I appreciate that insight. Grit, grace, and gratitude, is that what you said? Do you recall when you came up with those and what led to establishing those? It was
at Eastern Washington.
Okay. Oh, really? Wow, okay.
So trying to figure out, how do I want to express, and what was funny was after we established those words and the university took them over and it's now part of the university.
Really?
Yeah, I should have patented that. So,
wow.
But I believe in, all the studies have been done on grit. I believe in hard work. I really believe that if you want to do something bad enough, you can overcome people that maybe have more than you, but you're consistent and you've outworked them. I really believe that. And then no matter what happens, that you keep going.
Right.
You cannot quit. You just got to pick up and go again, and that's grit to me. Grace means that you know when to pass the ball. You know when to set the block. You know when to say, I'm sorry. You know when to take care of others. You know when to take care of yourself. And then gratitude, I don't think what we've been through the last 3 years, if you didn't get up every day and say, I'm blessed, thank you, let's see what we can make happen today, then we would have never gotten out of the hole.
Yeah.
And we spend a whole lot of time really talking to each other that, hey, even all the things we've gone through, we have a lot to be grateful for. And if you can build on that, then you will continue to be able to have the grit to then give your teammates the grace to be successful.
And then have gratitude after they find that success, which is excellent. It seems to me, you mentioned when you went up there as interim, and you sat in a couple meetings, and you're like, I feel like I'm supposed to be here. I've done a lot of this before. There may be some way I can help. Sometimes the universe puts you in a position where you're supposed to be, right? Because who knows? Someone else may have been in that, they may have hired a fresh new athletic director, and then they come to that person a year and a half later and say, we're going to get rid of athletics, and that person wouldn't have had the grit, grace, or the gratitude to fight that fight and still persevere through to be where you are now in terms of East Washington. So I imagine that the community, the constituency, most if not all of the faculty, other than the people who didn't want to see athletics coming there, but most if not all appreciate that you were there to help weather that storm and get them where they need to be.
It was a team. We have a team, and we have a lot of people that really, the fans, we've got some great fans. Tailgating at Eagle football games is unbelievable in this little town. The
Right.
RVs pull in on Friday night, and they're packed in that parking lot. They really believe. I believe in God. I think what you've got to be careful about sometimes, and I really believe He has a plan for our lives. I think what we've got to be careful about, and sometimes, when things got bad, I would go, was this Lynn's idea or was this God's? Did I make it sound like it was God's idea because I was fearful I wasn't going to have another job, or but then things just keep happening. And the other thing I think I focus on is I can't imagine now not having had all these people in my life.
Right.
What if I had not taken them?
Yeah, who knows?
And
I mean, you've been doing something great, but
no, but all the kids and the staff. So yeah, we'll see how all this turns out. But in my mind, it was a calling, and it was the right thing to do at that time.
Yeah.
And so hopefully I can get us back on course, and we can get everything back in place and keep moving forward.
Yeah, I think you'll be great at it, and you'll see that things are working out however they're supposed to work out, right?
Okay.
Well, Lynn, I really appreciate you joining us here on Athletic Director. It was a great conversation.
Well, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. That was Lynn Hickey. Lynn is the Director of Athletics at Eastern Washington. And of course, this is Ty Brown with AthleticDirectorU. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.